Thanks for joining the DA chapter webinar today. So we are very honored today to have two speakers on our DA webinar to speak to us on the agile management and application. So maybe we can run through the schedule for today. Right, okay, so today we have two speakers. Our first speaker is Professor Alex Xiao. He's from the National University of Singapore School of Computing. He'll be speaking to us later on the first CIO in Singapore on agile management. Next, we also have the second speaker, Frankie Chu. He's the Assistant Director from the Government Digital Service, Government Technology Agency. He'll be speaking to us on agile development in LifeSG project. So after that, we will have a short Q&A session. So please feel free to key your question at the Q&A box. We'll try and answer them as much as we can. After that, we will then also be proceeding with the Digital Assurance Chapter 28 AGM. So for all the members, kindly just stay for the AGM session later, while we will introduce our new ESCO members. So this is kind of the agenda for today's program. So welcome again, everyone, to this session. Okay, so perhaps we can go to the first topic for today. Just before we start the first topic, just like to do a quick introduction of Professor Alex Xiao. So he is the professor in the School of Computing at the National University of Singapore, as well as the director of the Advanced Computing for Executive, the Strategic Technology Management Institute, and the Center of Health Informatics. He's also the chairman of TOEF Technologies Private Limited and independent director of T International Limited, a member of the board governance at Temasek Polytechnic, a member of the board trustees at Singapore Universities of Social Science, and also a member of directors of the Ang Mo Kio THK Hospital. He's also the chairman for the Cloud Security Alliance Singapore chapter. He's also a strategic advisor to Infotech and consultant to U3 Infotech. So Professor Xiao's expertise is in IT governance, enterprise risk management, management of emerging technologies, and technology roadmap planning. He's also very active in project management, fintech, blockchain, and cybersecurity communities. So please let us welcome Professor Alex Xiao to give us the talk on the first CIO Singapore on agile management. Thank you. Over to you, Prof. Alex Xiao.
Thank you very much. Let me try to share my screen first. Yep. Thank you for the introduction. Wait, let me reshare again. Yeah. Somehow the screen went black when I shared. Gabby, I'm having some problem when I'm sharing.
Prof, I will share your deck.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, while Gabby is getting my deck up, my topic today will be well, to talk about my days in the early days. You know, I became CIO in 1991, so I lived through the 90s. So I was actually a CIO until 2003 in HDB. And after that, I went into the private sector. And in the private sector, I became CIO again for another 3 years. in year 2012. Yeah, so I sort of want to share because in my days as a CIO, Agile wasn't available. So I will briefly talk about what is Agile. So the set, I know I'm talking to the converted, I think most of you know what is Agile, but to put everybody in the same level playing field, in the same platform, maybe we just look at the next slide, please. Gabby, the next slide. So Agile, is the ability to create and respond to change. That's basically what is Agile all about. It was concocted as a way to respond quickly to change. It's a way of dealing with and ultimately succeeding in an uncertain and turbulent environment. So bear in mind that when they first came up with this Agile philosophy, is actually to take care of turbulent environment when the system development has to take place. Okay, so therefore, the key to the Agile approach is actually adaptiveness and response to change. So this one, we put it at the back of our mind as we continue. Next slide, please. So the manifesto, when the founders of this Agile came up with the 4 key values. First value is that individuals and interactions is more important than processes and tools. All right, that means people are more important. Working software is more important than comprehensive documentation. In the old days of software development lifecycle, documentation is very important. So every stage we have to document very well. So yes, in an Agile manifesto, it's a working software more important. Okay. Thirdly is customer collaboration, getting the customer or the users together to collaborate is more important than having a contract negotiation. Then responding to change is more important than following a detailed plan of software development. Next slide, please. So there are 12 principles of Agile development. I'll just run through this very quickly. I know you're quite familiar with this, but maybe from my own interpretation, all right? Firstly, customer satisfaction is achieved through early and continuous software delivery. Now, this, I tell you, in the old days, under the Waterfall method and the software development lifecycle, usually after we finish the project and then we deliver to the customer and we see a black face because we misinterpreted what actually they want to, and then we have to sometimes redo again, I think, so this Agile methodology will take away all this pain. Secondly, accommodate changing requirements throughout the development process, frequent delivery of working software rather than wait 2 years and then give a final product to the users. Collaboration between business stakeholders and developers throughout the whole project, support, trust, and motivate the people involved. This is very important here. Yeah. So Agile also take into account that the people involved, they also have to be motivated in order to complete the project to the satisfaction of the customer. Enable face-to-face interactions, not only between the project team, but also with the customers or the users. Working software is a primary measure of progress. Agile processes to support a consistent development pace, attention to technical detail and design enhances agility because Agile means you have to move fast. So if you do not pay attention to technical details and you have to do rework, then you are not really Agile because then you have to do a lot of repair work. Simplicity, self-organizing teams encourage great architectures, requirements, and designs. And lastly, regular reflections on how to become more effective. And these are the 12 principles. Next slide. So in short, Agile is a mindset. It's more than a methodology. Ultimately, it is a mindset informed by the Agile Manifesto values and principles. Those values and principles provide guidance on how to create and respond to change and how to deal with uncertainty. Next slide. Okay, for those of you not so familiar, in the old days, we have traditional application development process. We call it a system development lifecycle, and this is the waterfall methodology. And when I was a CIO, this is what I learned. Okay, so all systems we follow a SDLC. It's like a Bible, you have to follow. So first you gather requirements, and then after that you do external design and show it to the customer. Is this actually what are you thinking of? Yeah, and then after that, if the user confirm the requirement is correct, the external design is correct, then we do the internal design, and then we do the testing. Then we do the implementation after successful testing, and then we verify that everything is okay, and then otherwise we may have to do change requests. Then we do the maintenance. So that was the system development lifecycle waterfall methodology. Next slide. So then there was also information engineering made popular by James Martin, where it is roughly the same as a waterfall methodology, except that now we take into account the business requirement, the strategic direction of the business. And then in this information engineering, as the name suggests, we actually engineer the data model, then you engineer the process, model the processes, then you do the system design, okay, and then you do the system implementation. So you see the red line, above the red line is technology dependent, technology independent, because that is where you conceptualize the whole project. And then after that, you select the technology, and then the rest, the system design and implementation is technology dependent. Next slide, please. And then we thought, somewhere after 5 years as a CIO, I said, maybe we should have a better, because every time we develop a system, it takes 1 to 2 years, sometimes even 3 years. I think, should we possibly have a more rapid process? So we came up with the rapid application development. I think it's also invented by James Martin, but popularized by IBM. So first we have the requirement planning, and then we do prototypes. Now, the idea of this was because in the old waterfall methodology, you have to wait a long time before you can actually show a product to the user. So why not we have prototypes? Now, the problem with system development in the old days is that the users usually do not really know what they actually want. They roughly have an idea and want a system to do certain things, all right? Like, for example, in HDB was a management of all the car parks, or also a system to capture people who have done illegal parking, all right? So roughly they know we want such a system, but the final product, how it looks like, they have no idea until you finish, okay? So here in the prototyping, we build a prototype, you see, roughly, is this what you want? Then they can visualize, they can see, then they say, oh, yeah, I want some improvement here, improvement there. So then we do a second prototype. So it goes on until finally you say, okay, this is what it confirms, this is your requirement, and this is the design, and then we will Then we'll do the construction, and then we do testing, and then the implementation and release. Next slide. This is another pictorial representation. It's a prototyping methodology. It's the same thing. You do the requirement analysis, feasibility study, and then you do the prototyping, right? And you see in the prototyping, you have the software design, then the customer reviews, and then the customer evaluation, right? So it is a cyclical thing. Finally, when everything is okay, then we do the coding, software testing, and software maintenance. Next. Then there are other methodologies practiced by some other people, but I did actually myself use this. We call it incremental framework, and it's a spiral consisting of 4 stages. Firstly, determine the objectives, identify and resolve all the risks involved, and then do the development and testing and plan the next iteration. So it is also going in cycle. Now, notice that all these ultimately led to the creation of the Agile methodology. Okay, next. So here you are. So it is similar in a cyclical manner. In the Agile methodology, we break projects into chunks, manageable chunks, and then we will go to firstly the evaluation of the processes and current structure of the company. You suggest improvement and process optimization, and then together with the client or the users, we do the application design, and then we do the construction, implementation, evaluation, and monitoring. And then it goes similar to the prototyping. It goes through, except that here we call a sprint, right? 1 sprint, 2nd sprint, and finally we confirm the product. Next slide. Okay. A lot of people say Agile is dead. And actually, you go to internet, you see there are lots of these pictures that say Agile is dead, rest in peace. Yeah. So next slide, please. Is Agile really dead? Well, some critics of Agile says Agile has been around since 2001. It's 20 years, yet people still struggle to put it into practice. In fact, recently I was doing a consultancy in a big bank in Vietnam, and they tried to implement a system using Agile. And after 6 months, they failed, and they have to scrap the project. So, yeah, why did it fail? Some say Agile has outgrown its usefulness. Although agility was clearly an implied benefit, in practice, the opposite is sometimes true. Now, I'll explain why all this happened. Agile does not always scale well. So now they have the SAFE to say maybe we should have another way to scale Agile. Enterprise data projects are not good candidates for Agile. There's a limitation of how Agile handles larger teams. And you have a team that's more than 10%, sometimes it may not be so good and may not be so agile. Communications, which is very important in Agile, is difficult in larger teams. Now, the thing is, the problem is that some people think that Agile is a solution to all projects. But actually, let me go to the next slide first. Yeah. So for Agile to succeed, there must be some critical success factor. Firstly, there must be top management support, and there must be a corporate culture that we believe in agility. Okay, it has to trickle down because people have to adjust to the way they develop a system. In the past, they used the Waterfall, so now the Agile is, to some people, it's just like structured programming versus object-oriented. It's a total change of mindset. User involvement, stakeholder politics, effective project management skills. Yes, Agile depends a lot on also good project management, because everybody has to contribute to timely update. Okay, we can't do an Agile methodology and then take our sweet time and while the other team members are waiting for you. So effective communication and feedback is very important. Next slide. For process, we must have simplicity in the process, and there must be a good reporting of project status by everybody involved. There must be risk management. Everything that we do, there is risk, but we can manage the risk. Accurate estimates of time and resources, and there must be active testing. And for the project, there must be clear objectives and goals, realistic schedule and budget, clear requirements and specification. Next slide. So, Agile is not and never was about getting developers to write software faster. No, that is not the purpose of Agile. Agile, for me, when we started implementing Agile, when we wanted, to not to have the same, use the same, what you call it, a wedge hammer, sledgehammer to kill a fly. That means you have a project which have to be implemented very quickly, and it is not an enterprise-wide type of system, a whole ERP system or CRM system. Then perhaps we can use a more agile method to develop, so that projects get delivered quickly and to the satisfaction of the users. And so it was not because we want the developers to write software faster. We want the projects to be delivered faster. Agile is about getting developers in touch with the people who are the actual users and customers regularly and repeatedly, so that the project doesn't inevitably run off course and produce something other than what the users want. That is the main purpose, all right? So to adopt the Agile method does not mean just to practice its tools and artifacts. It means that you should change your team behavior and the way of thinking. So to adopt Agile, you should first have agility. So before I end, let me go back to why some of these projects, although they fail, all right? Now, it's because in the first place, not everything is suitable to be an Agile. Okay, you don't do a huge human resource information system for the whole enterprise, and then you put it on Agile, unless you can break it into segments and modules, and certain things can be standalone and can be delivered, that you can apply to a Agile methodology on it. So to me, there is a time and place for Agile. And if the people misinterpret what is Agile for, so Agile is not a replacement for the software development life cycle, because there is still a place for enterprise systems to be placed on using the Waterfall methodology, where you have sequential development. Okay, you have one part confirmed before you go on to the next part. That is for the huge big system, because Agile is suitable where the team size is not more than 10% to do a certain part of the project. So thank you very much for your attention. I hope Frankie will now show us how to do Agile in his enterprise.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Alex Xiao, for that very insightful presentation on the progression, especially on the Agile management over the years. I mean, now everybody wants the speed, everybody wants it to be fast, and then products to be user-friendly. But I think that as part of the chapter also, we just want to kind of give everyone the insight as to, although we require all those implementations to be fast, but we also have to ensure that the quality checks and everything are embedded within all the development life cycle, and also that quality cannot be compromised. So we'll just proceed to our next speaker, Mr. Frankie Chu. So he is the Assistant Director from the Government Digital Service, Government Technology Agency. So Frankie leads the delivery of products under the LifeSG initiative, formerly the Moments of Life, one of the national strategic project under the Smart Nation initiative. So this initiative aims to create platforms to support and scale whole of government, WOG, efforts in offering a very unique government-citizen relationship. So before I invite Mr. Frankie Chu to give us the second topic, I'd like to ask everyone to continue to post your questions to the Q&A. So we will try and answer them towards the end of the second session. So Frankie, over to you. Thank you.
Hey, hi everyone. I share my screen. I think before I start introducing myself and stuff, I wanted to say that if I had earlier attended professor's talk, I might not be here sharing my experience anymore. You'll see why later, because whatever I'm going to share is coincidentally very aligned to what he had mentioned just now. Okay, hi everyone. I started my career as a software engineer. You know, in the past, there's no front-end, back-end, no data, no DevOps kind of engineering. Everybody is just full stack engineering. And I progressed my career through project management because in the past, you know, that's how people progress, right? In fact, I did quite a fair bit of what Professor had shared before, Waterfall, RAD, stuff like that. Even some of the projects are managed in-house, offshore, and even outsourced Agile. Today, I'm in GAFF, right, doing platform development, right? We have a combination of few approaches as well. We do in-house Agile development, we co-source with our partners, and then certain parts we outsource. I'll go into a little bit later in terms of my sharing. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the product that I manage lah. So LifeSG is actually a product that is an initiative that is started off with this branding called Moments of Life. So in Moments of Life, right, we started off Moments of Life for family, right? We tackle a very specific problem, which is birth registration process with government. So then we evolved from there, and then we recently rebranded last year August-ish into LifeSG. Why we rebrand is also we wanted to go beyond a specific moments and into whole of government kind of moments of life. That's why we call ourselves LifeSG. Anyway, I wanted to add that through this course of the evolution. So sorry. I actually transited from one very small Agile team into today's context, right? Five sub-teams running on this platform as what Professor had mentioned just now, right? Actually, the scaling up is the most challenging part of Agile. So today, my sharing will draw a little bit of learnings from this journey of scaling up, and whatever I'm going to share is not necessarily just applicable to scaling up. All this learning can be applied to the teams who want to start Agile or already in Agile and wanted to learn a bit more. Okay, let me talk a little bit about GAFF. So GAFF, you can broadly categorize GAFF into 3 pillars. One of them, which is where I'm in, is product management, product capabilities, and product delivery. Right? They also have this strategic national projects under it, which is one of the pillars that I'm in now. They also manages whole government infrastructure. Second pillar is services, basically the CIO officers of for government, most of the government agencies, up to 60 of them. And lastly, cyber and governance. So setting policies and the CIO officer for government sector. GAFF is about 3,000 strong today. Okay, before I move on further, my sharing is a little bit fun, right? So I wanted to engage with you a little bit. So please make use of the chat function that you see in Zoom, right? I'll post a few questions later. We'll play a little bit of game and please participate. Don't be shy. You can see me, I cannot see you, so don't be shy. Okay, let's go. Let's try this, right? Please, if you are ready, right, type me into the chat. Come on. ME, type me into the chat if you are ready. Okay, okay, good, good. Keep it coming. I'll move on, right? Please don't be shy because my style is a little bit engaging with you all. So yeah. Okay, so this is the first game that we are going to play, right? So in this picture, there is actually a character hidden in it. Please help me identify the character if you see it and type in the chat. What do you see in this picture? Can be very tough, right? So let me help you a little bit. Is it clearer now? Yes, a ninja. Yes, correct. Jimmy, I will give you a prize later. Jimmy is the first to reply, to identify. Yes, it's a ninja. So yeah, today my sharing theme is about ninja. Actually, this is a made-up word. This is a made-up word in case you are already wanting to go to Google it. There's no such word as this. Maybe it will bring you to some surname in Africa. That's more or less about it. Ninja is derived from the word ninja, right? And agile. So like I mentioned, this is a ninja team sharing. I'm sure that many of you have attended agile talks before, many different agile talks. So I'm trying to make it a little bit more fun, right? A little bit more interesting by using a ninja team to talk about agile. Okay. So my next question is, right, I think throughout our childhood lifetime, or be it movies or whatsoever, right, we all know that ninja has legendary powers, right, that can perform many traits, many different kind of things. So I wanted to ask everybody, right, based on your childhood memory, it can be movies, it can be cartoon, right, where you watch before. Maybe not the turtle version, that one a bit. Oh, yeah, just please help me type in the chat, right, that what are the skills or attributes that stick to you, right, of a ninja, right? It can be things like invisibility. It can be things like, yeah, stealth, right? Swift in action, fast, okay, and flexibility. Yeah, my favorite is my favorite is when the ninja throw a smoke bomb and then they disappear. So the smoke bomb thing. Okay, thank you very much for your participation. So quick reflexes, adaptable. Yes, a lot of things that ninja can do, right? So for me today, right, I will stick a little bit with these two attributes, being less honorable, right? This may sound a little bit negative. Maybe I give you a little bit more context later on. And the ability to shape shift, right? So yeah, so for me, right, another very key impression of a ninja is that I ever watched some movie before, they just use a cloth to cover them and they became a piece of rock. So I use these two attributes to do a little bit of sharing. Okay, first, being less honorable. Like I mentioned, this is sounded like a little bit less positive, but let me give you a little bit of context to it. So this person, Daisuke, right, was a fallen samurai in Japan, right, and he was the first person who founded ninjutsu. All these things I Google lah. So actually I'm not a ninja expert, so don't quote me. And in the past, right, samurai was deemed like a very high prestigious royal family, and they inherited a lot of military nobility and stuff like that. So this person, I think he lost a war, went into the mountains, met a monk in the mountains. And he actually developed this thing called ninjutsu, basically the practice of ninja, fighting without rules. And typically today, the impression of them today is that they do a lot of covert operations. So because of the nature of their how they perform their role, covert nature, they are deemed a little bit less honorable than the samurai. So I just want to frame a context to it. It's actually not very negative, but it's just the way that they practice and perform their tasks. I'll come back to that a little bit. So over the past 1 year, like I mentioned, right, my team actually expanded from left to right, roughly about 3 times. We are actually close to 60 men strong today. And through this journey, right, we actually started scaling up our Agile team, and we tried to continue to practice faithfully and being very honorable, right, in our practice. Trust me, we practice quite a fair bit of frameworks, right, from Kanban to Scrum, and then when we scale up, we try less, we try Scrum, and then we go around and around and around. We during this journey, right, we are not satisfied with what we are at that point of time, right? The challenges that we face, like what Professor had mentioned, right, rightly pointed out, communication, right, it was less effective, and then we went into a communication fatigue. Everybody was saying, wow, there's too many meetings, I cannot spend time working on my tasks, I cannot spend time coding, I cannot spend time testing, right? There's a lot of interdependencies between the teams that we need to be aware of, identify very clearly, else we'll always be blocking each other. And we are always stepping on each other's toes. So we came to a point that, maybe we don't understand the framework very well, maybe we are not really very well versed of the Agile methodologies. So until a day, right, someone who newly joined our team came in with a very fresh mind and asked a very simple question, right? Are we really agile just by following Agile? And it poses a question to us, what is really Agile, right? So in fact, after that, we start to came to realization, right? As what Professor had rightly pointed out, Agile is about a mindset, right? It's not really a set of instruction. So we decided, right, as a team, let's try and fail and try again. So what we did was really unhonorable. We actually took whatever works well for us in different practices, and then we merge them in together. Things that doesn't work, we change, right? We take small pieces from all the different frameworks and see what works for us as a team or even as a sub-team, right? So we don't have Scrum Master anymore, right? We have fixed length sprint, we do sprintly release, but we also welcome changes during the sprint. And we shorten the time to market and stuff like that, right? The different attributes of each of the frameworks. So that is where we came to a conclusion today that we are merging all these different practices together. I also wanted to talk about Waterfall versus Agile a little bit, right? I recall back many years ago when we started, when I personally started Agile. I was also Googling about it, trying to understand what is Agile and things like that. In the past, there are a lot of all these articles that talk about Waterfall versus Agile, right? Maybe at that point of time, the understanding of Agile is not that strong, right? People are trying to still figure out what is Agile. And along the way, right, there are a lot of arguments, right, outside in terms of articles or posts or whatsoever, right, that is always the comparison of Agile versus Waterfall, which one is superior, what are the pros and cons and things like that. So very seldom we, at that point of time, see a harmony of both, people can merge both together and things like that. It's always about either one or the other. I think that is okay. That is very normal because at that point of time, right, the evolution of Agile and trying to have a better result and outcome of it. So people tend to compare which one is better before jumping into it and things like that. So I think for us, right, we actually do it a bit different now. We actually wanted to wield the shield and the sword to our advantage, right? We don't discriminate either one of them, right? While we practice our Agile methodology, right, we also at the same time to do some form of waterfall for those pieces that we have more clarity and even outsource them, right? Because one of the heavy problem that we have is also the high demand of stories that we need to churn out. And then hiring and expansion might take time. And we actually need to take hiring and expansion as part of the longer term plan. So a lot of all these shorter terms demand, we came to decide that, hey, all these are actually quite defined. We don't really need to don't really need everything to be done by our team. In fact, since all these are well defined, we can also outsource them and even let them run waterfall. So our problem can be focused. We can focus on our role, our job, what we need to focus on more objectively. So we use the means to deploy our resources, flexibility. So then that was how we came to today. So in gist, I would say that, if you look at us, people sometimes say that we are a plate of Rojak, right? As you all know, Rojak is smashing of all those different things together, trying to make it work, make it nice. It's definitely not like very honorable to say that I practice Scrum, I practice Agile to faithfully, right? But at the end of the day, this plate of Rojak can be also very yummy and very nice. So that is the outcome of it that we are trying to achieve. Okay, next. The other attribute that I was touching on is shape-shifting. So shape-shifting is a lot about the ability to take form and shape of the surrounding of the situation. So it's like water taking shape of the container, right? It's all about being able to fit in or make changes to it. Okay, also the same for scaling up, right? We, at the very initial stage, already identified that growth, our biggest enemy of growth is being separated, the teams being separated and identify themselves not as the larger team, but as a team by themselves. In Scrum, right, it can be positive things to a certain extent, but it can also lead to some downward spiral, like if this is not managed properly. Things like conflict between the teams, they want to compete with each other, they want to perform better than each other. That is something quite positive in Scrum, but there might potentially be outcome and result of politics and things like that. So we actually didn't really want to uniquely identify a team by themselves, but we sort of like look at ourselves as a larger team, as a larger LifeSG team, right? That is the principle that we are gunning for. So how do we do that, right? So this goes back to the focus of our culture. Our culture is a lot about developing our people. In this era, there's a lot of all these very specialized roles. Don't get me wrong, specialization is good, but I think we also need to focus a little bit of the breadth, right? Overly specialized will hinder your flexibility to a certain extent. While you're a subject matter expert, right? It might be a good thing, but for us, our belief is that we need to develop our people in terms of breadth as well. Examples of that is our engineers are largely encouraged to be full stack. Yes, they can still focus on front end, they can still focus on back end, but they have some breadth in their skills as well. Our engineers also can do PM work. Some of our engineers can also talk design. some of our designers, right, can do front-end coding, right? So to us, actually, our people are a little bit of a unicorn now. Sometimes we run into problem of hiring as well. That's why sometimes we also can face difficulties in hiring, in trying to find the right people, but we still focus on developing them. Why this is important? Because if you recall how we tackle the problem of being too identified as a single team and not as a larger team. So having capability, having skill sets across the breadth, doesn't need to be specialized. We are able to group them in terms of mini projects, or we are able to attach them into different teams to work together, right? Sometimes on and off, there is a little bit of small projects, the outcome of it. We might not just assign it to a team. We might craft a new team, right, to come together for a very short term to work on this initiative, this small, it might be an epic, right? And they come together and mix around with each other together as a larger team. So that is how we cross collaborate between all the different teams, right? No matter what, they're still working on the same platform. Before I talk about this, I want to engage with you all again, right? There is this term called the bus factor, right? Anybody who knows about this term, can you please type me in the chat? Come on, I just wanted to know how many of us actually heard about the bus factor. No? Yes? No? No idea. Okay, no. Okay, then let me explain a little bit about bus factor, right? You can definitely go and Google that. Bus factor is about, today if one of your engineers is the only person who knows about that piece of code, and touch wood, he's being knocked down by a bus, and there's no knowledge, and you are just relying on one person. So the gist is that being overly relying on one person to hold a context. If that person leaves the organization, leaves the team, that's the end of your product lah. So that's the idea behind it lah. So through cross collaboration between teams, not just that we can harmonize the growing problem, we can also tackle this bus factor issue. So we increase the bus factor, cross-pollinate to all the members of different teams, because each of them actually work on different stuff before. Every one of them holds a little bit of context within the product. So this is the advantages of cross collaboration. This might not be what Agile preaches, but I think these are the mindset, the spirit of Agile, being flexible enough to do these kind of things. And the other important thing is that when they cross collaborate, right, and they need to be able to self-organize, right? This is a very key factor to it, because I think self-organizing is one of the principles of Agile, right? And today we have moved to a state that we don't have a Scrum Master anymore. Everyone in the team can be a Scrum Master themselves. So for us, right, or for them lah, is very, very flexible, right? They internally organize themselves. They decide for themselves that who wants to be a facilitator at any time, who wants to be a leader. They can even go into the mode that they rotate every sprint, they rotate every X days, months, weeks. So another benefit of doing this is also the co-ownership, right? They own this project, they own these bits of work that they are doing, right? And everybody will be very motivated. Then all the other benefits will come into the picture, right? Increase in speed, increase in agility, and stuff like that. So aligning back to what Professor had mentioned, right? Agile is really not about delivering faster or delivering more, right? It's just an outcome of it, right? Agile is about self-organizing, about communication, about teamwork, people working with each other. So you might be wondering, right? So how does operation or production support works in our team, since our product has already went live for quite a while already? So again, right? Again, that self-organizing principle, right? Or collaboration approach, because our people are developed in a way that they can do quite a fair bit of things. Operations works in the way that each of the teams will have somebody identified for that sprint to be on duty, right? And then this group of people, while there are not a lot of production issues to solve, they will continue to work within their feature team, right? But as long as there is a production ticket being raised, this team will come together and decide, right, who will pick it up and work on that in priority. So this is how production operation works lah. I know certain teams actually craft out another team to do production support, right? Why we did not went into that mode is because, again, back to our principle, right? If this team is just solely focused on doing production and maintenance, right? We are not really developing them in terms of their breadth, right? They don't have the opportunity to co-create the product. They don't have the opportunity to go into, you know, a little bit of design, a little bit of QE, and a little bit of other stuff, right? So this is how we organize ourselves, and also lucky to say we don't have a lot of production issues to begin with. That is potentially where, you know, because the team co-own the product, right? They actually take pride in their work, and they actually have very high standard of themselves and their quality. I want to come into a very quick conclusion, right? At the end of the day, right? Agile team basically is just one very small team under a very large organization, right? Especially in enterprise organization like GAFF or other big organization in the private sector, right? I do know that a lot of people are comparing, or when they move into Agile, right? There's a lot of comments about, oh, the organization haven't changed, and it's very hard for us to practice Agile, and people up there don't change, you will not be successful, and things like that. So I think maybe at the end of the day, right, if you look at senior management or the people up there, right, they are taking higher risks, right? The things that they do are largely of higher uncertainty, right? It is less likely for them to just dictate just like that and let's change. There's a lot of consideration that they need to make in terms of impact. While if you look at a product team working on a very specific product, it's a lot easier for them to change, right? Because the certainty is higher, and probably the risk is lower. If this team change and things fail, they can just pick up and move on and improve, right? Imagine when an organization failed, right? It can be quite disastrous. So what I want to share is that largely what I have shared here is you don't really need to adopt Agile until your organization is ready to change, right? Again, coming back to the Agile mindset, right? Things that are within our control, right? Things that we can do, things that are within our means. If we can try it, we just try it, right? As long as we learn from it, we feel it's okay, we start to pick up ourselves and move forward again. So I think don't be, my conclusion on this slide is that don't be blocked by the mountain. So don't be blocked by trying to shift the mountain, right? But break it down into small pebbles, right? To show, to prove, right, that Agile will work for your organization. And at the end of the day, all these success stories will definitely cross-pollinate to all other parts of your organization. So at the end of the day, I want to leave you all with employ whatever frameworks that work, focus on developing your people, and be very into self-organizing team, because that is going to save you a lot of headaches, right? We don't even need to go into micromanaging and things like that anymore. So I come to the end of my deck. I just want to pose one last question. Anybody want to learn more? Please type me into the chat. Okay. Okay, good. Thank you very much for your participation. Okay, so for GAFF, we organize a lot of talks. One of the major events that run every year, right, was StatX. It is to engage developers and techies like yourself, even management level, right? So scan the QR code to join on the screen to join the community, right? We will share more deep dive information with you all. We also have our developer portal as well. So if you have time, please go to developer.gaff.sg. This is already live. Inside there, you'll see the result of some of the products that we developed. Please connect with us, talk to us. Lastly, right, if anybody is keen to help the community, you can definitely join us, right? We are also hiring, we are also trying to overcome the crisis that we are facing today. So I hope I shared with you something. If I have not really touched on Agile that you can bring back home, I thought I shared with you something about Ninja. So I hope all of you can bring something home today. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Frankie. Thank you for the very insightful presentation also. So at least I learned that ninjutsu was found by Daisuke. I hope I got the name right. Yeah. So I guess as I go through Professor Alex Xiao and of course Frankie's presentation, it is kind of very heartened to see that how organization has actually progressed from the 1990s to today. From the fact that with all these established theories and stuff, we can see that organizations are leveraging on those theories, customizing it to their own use, how they can best utilize it within the organization. And also, as what Frankie has also mentioned, to then become a customized plate of Rojak. Yeah, so again, I think and there was also a couple of important points that Frankie has also mentioned, the skill set of our people, the breadth of the skill set, and of course, in terms of collaboration within the various teams, to have that bonding and also that the innovation that comes out from all this collaboration, I think is all very important point. And I guess that the last one that Frankie was talking about, of course, the buzz factor, and of course, kind of the servant leadership as to every one of us starts leading by serving the organization, helping the organization, I think, to achieve the goals. So we all have capability among ourselves to actually achieve much greater goals. So thank you very much for the two speakers, very good and insightful theories and experience shared. So members or participants who are still on the call, you can continue to pose your questions in the Q&A. We will proceed to the Q&A session. Just hold on while I look at the questions that are posted. All right, we have one question on, I believe this will perhaps be for Professor Alex Xiao. There is a question about the clear requirements and specification. You mentioned about the clear requirements and specification. How do we balance between agile versus formal requirement sign-off to avoid issues of requirement creeps? And also, there is what is the best practice in managing requirements sign-off? Example, which logical point in the agile methodology?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. Yeah, this has always been a perennial problem, requirement creep. Yeah. Actually, requirement creep is not a methodology, it's not a waterfall problem, and it's also not really an agile problem. It's a project management problem, right? So in any software development project, whether it is through waterfall or by agile, strong project management is the key. So in Agile, you have the Scrum Master, who is actually a sort of a project manager. And of course, Frankie say now they motivate everybody to take the lead themselves. Everyone take turns. But anyway, let's address the question. Requirement in the Waterfall days, when we are doing SDLC, you actually finalize the requirement after you have done the external design and show it to the users and say, does it capture all the essence of whatever we discussed, all the requirement gathered, and then we sign off. Okay. Now, inevitably, after that, the users say, maybe can you add a little bit here and add a little bit there? Well, so then it's a project management problem, right? Whether do we allow? So I think it is a risk management problem as well. By taking on some of the new requirement, does it actually make things better, or is it going to make the project even more complicated? And also, is it essential, or is it a nice to have feature? All right. So even in the Agile methodology, we will do all the many rounds of prototyping and sprint, and finally we will have something which is workable, and then we can start doing the coding. It's inevitable that also after users being users, okay, and you can't blame them, because if they see something every day, there are new requirements change in their business, and they may come say, actually, there's a new requirement. This is more urgent. I think then it's a risk management thing, whether you want to take on and whether it is essential or is it nice to have. We cannot be so dogmatic and say, as a software developer, we say that no, the requirement already signed off, we can't change. But the business has changed, and the business requires a change. So we have to manage that, all right? And being agile means the ability to take on changes so that the business users can be satisfied.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor Alex Xiao. I hope that question was answered. So let's hop on to the next question. I think I'll go over to Frankie, if you don't mind. This is a question that is posted for Frankie. Do you have some data to share about the number of change failure incidents comparing to self-organization and the traditional organization structure? So this question is posted by Amos, yeah?
Okay, thank you, Amos, very much for the question. I think at the end of the day, I did not tabulate any numbers before, because when I was in GAFF working on LifeSG product, we started off with Agile already. But maybe if I can help you a little bit to understand how we work, right? Take for example, in our Agile cycle, right? We actually automate our regression testing and make it part of our DevOps pipeline. So what it means is that every sprint, every end of the sprint, right, we actually trigger this automation, right, to run the same set of test suite again and again and again and again before we release. That is how we achieve quality to the highest standards, right? So I guess in traditional approach, right, you will only, try to test, because it's very SDLC life cycle, you're only going to testing, very intensive testing at the end of the day, and you go through some QEs or UAT based on certain test scenarios or test script. My suspicion is that approach, right, has a lot more things that was discovered at that point of time, and sometimes it can be a very gray line where it is whether or not a bug or whether or not it is a new enhancement, right? Because all this were not discovered very upfront, like what Professor had mentioned, right? You only know the product at the end of the day. So if you ask me, right, if you look at these two approaches, right, what we are doing today is we iteratively develop the features, get it tested, regression tests, exploratory tests before we release it into production. And every 2 weeks, this thing keeps going on and on and on. So I guess quite safe to say that today the numbers should be a lot lesser. The quality should be quite high for our ways of doing things today, rather than the normal SDLC. So I hope I answered your question.
Okay, thank you, Frankie. Thank you very much. All right, sorry, let me just check.
I think there was a question addressed to me.
Yes. There's one question for Prof. Alex Xiao by Jing Shen. Yeah, so what are some of the ways in your personal experience to get the necessary top management support to adopt the Agile method, and what does top management looks like or entail?
Okay, let me tell you something about top management. Top management cares about, if you are in a private sector, they cares about making money more profitable. In the civil service, we say we want to serve the citizens better. So if it's a process that takes 10 days, maybe can we shorten it to 2 days or something like that? Yeah. So most of the time, top management will accept, if you want to introduce agile methodology, no problem. So there must be a business case for it. All right. By adopting this methodology, we can actually save more time and all that. Of course, the top management, they are not agile practitioner. But one thing you need their support is because in the agile development methodology, you have a lot of user involvement, right? Whereas in the SDLC, you have one time they are involved in the requirement and then the external design. Then after that, it's up to the IT to build the system. So whereas in the agile, there is this continuous requirement for the user to participate. So the top management must support. This is a resource issue, right? Giving resources, giving time to people to do system development. But finally, what gives the management a support for whatever methodology you want to come up with is your credibility. I mean, you for example, as I was mentioning, that in the bank, they say, okay, we will use Agile to develop this a mortgage system, and finally the team couldn't deliver, and then of course the top management say, oh, is this what you mean by agile, and obviously it doesn't work. So credibility is very important. So don't start off with an ambitious project. Start off with something low-hanging fruit, you can show results, and then when top management see that actually you can do systems much quicker by using agile methodology, and you can also satisfy the users much better, then of course they will give you support to continue to adopt the methodology. I think I will ask Frankie whether he want to add anything.
Yeah, thank you, Professor. I think I got nothing further to add. It was you hit right in the nail.
Right. Yeah, thank you, Professor. So there's also another question I think is very much also related to this. Perhaps also Frankie could give some comments on this one. So this question is from Lily. It is very often for stakeholders to associate the Agile with speedy delivery, comprising sprint and releases in weeks. Hence, it is difficult for them to comprehend when a fully operational product needs to be delivered in months instead of weeks. Is there a short, quick answer that we can give to better explain to stakeholders?
I think at the end of the day, right, this is potentially, from what I see, might not be related to the problem of employing Agile. It's probably some form of design thinking, maybe, right? In GAFF, what we practice is whenever we want to define an MVP, right, we go into a phase called inception. what we does there is that we gather all the stakeholders to come together again, right? The co-creation piece, right? To come and together identify the pain point that we want to solve, right? And then we work on it. We come together to align that what is the product that we are developing and what is the first MVP that we are going to roll out. So with that co-creation, right, everybody are on the same page that this is the first MVP that we are going to deliver. Then we can size up and then think about estimated time to release the first MVP, right? I think, again, back to what Professor had mentioned, right? This is really about getting the stakeholders together in the journey and co-own it together, right? So I think once they are in, they will start to understand, oh, why we only can do so much for this short period of time and etc., right? So when they are aware of it, then they can better appreciate what is happening. So it's all about transparency and co-creation with our stakeholders.
I agree, absolutely.
All right, thank you, Frankie. So there is actually one last questions that we perhaps can take from the audience. So there is one question that specifically asked from Grace. Is the DevOps team set up to support Agile implementation? If yes, why was it necessary to have this function?
Maybe I can take that question.
Yep.
I personally think that it really depends on the outcome that you want to achieve. For us, right, we believe a lot. Okay, maybe not very right to say we are lazy, but we believe a lot in automation, right? Because automation will cut down quite a fair bit of human errors, and automation can run any time, any amount of time, right? Even late in the night when we are sleeping or whatsoever, right? That is the power of automation. So I think it is not directly to say that this is part of Agile, but at the end of the day, right, if you look at Agile or actually Scrum, right, we want to release every sprint, right? This is where we set up a DevOps team to support, because as we are scaling up, right, we set up a DevOps teams to support the scaling up also. That's why it is actually an independent team by itself. Otherwise, if your team is small, if your team is not, if your product is not super huge, or you are trying to start out something, right, you don't really need a team, right? Anybody, any engineer, right, can also be a DevOps engineer, as long as you know how to set up a pipeline, develop them, to have that understanding and knowledge, set up automation to overcome a very specific problem, right? It's not really Agile or not, but it's really the outcome that we want to achieve.
Maybe I can add on to Frankie's point is some organizations try to do Agile, but they don't have DevOps. And that is actually a problem because, in the old days when you want to run a production system, you require a number of servers to be deployed. And, if you have to take weeks in order to acquire a server, then your Agile will not work. I mean, you're very fast in the doing the development, but your back end cannot catch up. I think, Frankie, you do have the problem, right? I mean, the DevOps is very important to support the Agile.
For us, we a bit reliant on DevOps. That's why it's super important for us. Somehow we are building a very large platform. If we don't have DevOps, right, the amount of manual work required is quite crazy. Then we are becoming non-Agile anymore.
Yes, yes.
All right, thanks a lot. Gabby, are we still on time? Just want to do a time check.
Yes, we are on time.
We still have one more questions. Do we want to take that or?
Yep, we can go ahead.
Frankie can take that. Yeah.
Yep. So I guess instead of full Agile, what do you think of the Agile Waterfall hybrid approach? Yep. So Frankie?
Yeah. I think based on my sharing, I think it's very obvious about my answer already, right? We don't mind being a bit of Rojak. Actually, really depends on your situation and what is the problem that you're trying to solve, right? It might not be Agile, it might not be Waterfall, it might be a hybrid of both, right? I personally is a bit more practical, right? Depending on the situation and the context that you are facing, right? Deploy what is meaningful for you all. If you are at the brim of starting Agile and don't have an experienced Scrum Master to help you, right, through the Agile journey, right? Maybe the better success is going a little bit Agile Waterfall-ish, right? So that some of the things that you want to, small things that you want to start trying out with Agile, you can start practicing it, while some of the other things that you might still run Waterfall. That is my personal view.
Right. Okay. Thank you, Frankie. Just to add on a little bit. Yeah. So same for Singapore Pools itself. We run in a hybrid mode, meaning that we have both. I think the Agile and Waterfall approach being practiced within the organization. I think for us is more of we see that there is more changes and things for the front end, the web and mobile side of things, whereas for the back end is usually more of a waterfall and runs a little bit slower. But having said that, there is then this still the collaboration between both the front end and the back end teams, whereby although they practice a little bit different, but it's still possible for an organization to actually adopt both Agile and a waterfall approach. Yeah. So we have kind of come to the end of today's session. I hope everyone has gained valuable insights from two key speakers. Thank you very much, Professor Alex Xiao and also Frankie for taking the time to our DA chapter webinar. So just before we end this webinar, appreciate if members or the participant could scan the QR code to give some feedback about the webinar. So later on, we will proceed with the Digital Assurance chapter AGM. So members kindly stay. Gabby, can I pass it to you?
Yes, okay, so thank you everyone for joining the webinar. So for everyone who have attended this webinar, thank you so much for the time spent here. I hope that it has been insightful for you. So before you go, please give us your feedback via the link, or you can scan the QR code. And after that, you can actually exit this webinar. For those DA chapter members, you can actually stay here. In a short while, I will actually promote you into a panelist and also to unmute you so that you can join the AGM. So yeah, so we will actually start the AGM at 7:30, and then all of us can have a short break while we turn this webinar around for AGM. So thank you so much and have a great evening to those who are leaving this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof, and thank you, Frankie.
Thank you. Yeah. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.